with a quick introduction here on Startup Grind. And Startup Grind started about 11 years ago out in Silicon Valley with a fireside chat format. The founder, Derek Anderson, was just really wanted to learn from other startup founders, entrepreneurs, investors, anyone that could come to the table and share their experiences with him and the startup community, and basically make it a place everybody could learn from, and learn from what went well, what didn't go well, and apply it to our own businesses, and built a strong community there. And now it's expanded into a chapter model across 500 different chapters around the world. So this is coming to you from the Boston chapter of Startup Grind. And yeah, and right now, we also have attendees from various locations. But yeah, so we'll be continue hosting. Right now, we have a few virtual events scheduled over June and July, and we'll be hosting some in-person events shortly as well. But yeah, really excited. We have two main sponsors: Brex, the credit card for startups, and ShipQuid, which helps automate your customer personas and identify the right audience to go after, and make your whole team come together in the right place there. And yeah, we have a few other upcoming events as well. A variety of partners and resources for early stage startups. So definitely check out startupgrind.com/Boston. But yeah, and we do have a pitch event coming up as well. But yeah, with that, excited that we have Dmitry Shapiro here as our featured speaker, the former CTO of Myspace and now the CEO of Koji. And yeah, Dmitry, if you want to give a quick introduction, and then it'll be, pretty conversational chat format. And again, anybody in the audience, feel free to chime in with questions in the chat throughout, and feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat there as well. But yeah, Dmitry, welcome to Startup Grind.
Yeah, super excited to be chatting with you. Thanks for having me. Well, the way I introduce myself these days is I'm an old nerd. Is kind of this role I'm playing. I'm CEO right now of Koji. The company is going to be 5 years old this coming September, just in a few months. Seems like it was just yesterday when we started it, and then it also seems like it was forever ago. We're a venture-backed company, raised $16 million, are about to raise another round. Kind of the short of it that we're doing now is we're kind of refactoring what's known as the creator economy, which is hundreds of independent companies sort of competing with each other and innovating, trying to provide tools for people. We're refactoring all of that into a link in bio, meaning sort of like a personal homepage for social, onto which you can add mini apps from our app store of these mini apps. And so we're taking these sort of entire companies and saying OnlyFans can be thought of not as a company or even as a product. It can be thought of as a feature called, sell premium images and videos. Cameo, which is another unicorn, can be thought of not as a company or a product, but can be thought of as a feature called, fulfill custom video requests, paid custom video requests to your fans. So anyway, so it's a sort of a bold endeavor that we're on, but we're super excited about it and starting to see, meaningful adoption of it, and excited sort of for the next phase. Prior to Koji, I spent 4 years at Google on the main campus, working primarily on social products for Google. Prior to that, I was CTO of Myspace Music. Before that, I built one of the major competitors for YouTube from 2005 to 2010 called VO Networks, raised $70 million for that. Got sued out of existence by Universal Music Group. We won the lawsuit, won both appeals, but they still killed us by suing our investors individually. It's kind of a famous story. You can Google it. We served as the precedent for the Viacom versus YouTube case. You know, they became a great success. We became the catalyst, the legal catalyst. Prior to that, I built a venture-backed cybersecurity company called Iconic Systems, raised $34 million for that. And then from 1995 to 99, I built the web team at Fujitsu. And then, you know, before that, started writing code in 1984 when I was in high school, and fell in love with code after watching the movie War Games. Like, I left that movie theater and I'm like, I need a computer. And, you know, we were super poor, so we couldn't afford a computer, but our school had 2 Apple II computers. And so I spent my time in the computer lab instead of being a normal teenager and enjoying a social life and such. I stared at a monochrome, you know, monitor.
So that movie really got you into, you know. Yes.
Yeah, Tony.
And yeah, obviously, you know, you've been a part of, you know, amazing ventures along the way, and some in the, or yeah, you know, several in the social media or related fields there. You know, as you were developing and, you know, had these strong technical capabilities, like what drove you into, you know, the social media field and some of the other companies you've been involved in?
So the thing that I fell in love with first about the internet was you know, chat rooms or social experiences that existed. This ability to, again, be sort of a nerdy kid with very few social skills, arguably, to be able to go online and be yourself and chat with people, complete strangers, was mind-blowingly just powerful to me. And over the years, as you know, I sought some of my own, you know, entrepreneurial endeavors. That's always been sort of the foundation of it. I mean, at Iconics, it was cybersecurity, which again, from War Games, you can imagine that sort of my early endeavors were less about creating things and more about breaking things. And so I still love cybersecurity, and so I got to play in that space for 5 years, and with $34 million, and you know, built a really interesting sort of platform there. You can Google it, called Akonix, AKONIX. But then the rest of it, I always found the social aspects of this connected medium that we've sort of collectively created to be the most powerful sort of areas for innovation, let's call it, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and we're continuing that now, and sort of proposing to do it at a, you know, at a massive scale, right? Because even if you look at all the innovation that's happened in social till now, yeah, great, you've got these big companies, you know, that are obviously creating lots of product, lots of features, introducing people and creating social graphs and all of that. But in the iOS App Store and on the Android App Store, there's over 4 million apps in each one of those app stores. And so those apps were developed by independent developers that decided to innovate on a launcher that's facing us. And these days, what we're proposing is, what if we took all of those developers and focused them on innovating on a launcher facing outwards, on a launcher that each one of us can create and say, this is my interface to the world. This is how you, the world, can engage with me. And I get to choose how I configure that launcher for you. That's the link in bio. And
Right.
What if we could get all those developers to focus on social apps? By definition, that's what this launcher is for. It's a social launcher, on social apps for this. And so all of this sort of, to me, is related, except now, again, we're trying to do it at this like massive scale. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and so no, it does. So I mean, a couple questions on the past part, but just yeah, while we're on Koji, I was looking through it, and looks like you have everything from like the ability or with the link in bio, providing other links, but also the ability to tip a creator, to have a video guest book, and what are some of the apps you have in Koji right now that you're most excited about?
Well, so actually the thing I'm most excited about is that all of the apps that we have in the App Store today are there's just over 100, maybe 120 something. Imagine YouTube when it only had 120 videos on it, and you could add, Chad and Steve, which of these videos are you most excited about? And they might have looked at you and said,
Right.
no, what we're excited about is that these things exist. And the fact that they exist implies the existence of all others. And they exist and people are making money, both creating them and using them. And by the way, to your point, if you looked at each one of them individually, they look like entire companies from a little mini
Right.
app. We have an app where you can use it to lock up images or videos. This is a company called OnlyFans, which tries to sell that feature in a sense. That's the value of OnlyFans, the ability to offer premium paid, content to people that care about it. Or there's a company called Cameo, right? This video request thing. We have a Koji for that. We have a little mini app. It lives on your link in bio. It's easier to use than Cameo is. It takes lower fees from you, the creator. You can create an offer in less than a minute, put it up there, and anyone that shows up to your profile on Instagram and TikTok, wherever, now gets to engage with you in this way. So each one individually we could get into and say, oh my God, that's incredible. That's a unicorn. That's a unicorn. That's a unicorn. But again, our goal is not to focus on any one of these individually, but sort of provide the fertile ground for developers of the world to show up and go, let's try 4 million, just like in the iOS App Store. In Android, it'd be awesome if we could have 4 million apps to choose from to add to our link in bio. What kinds of things could we see then? Well, everything we've ever seen on any app store or the web, by definition.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to be, be that central platform behind all of this. And I mean, nowadays, we're more comfortable and, social, whether it's social media or connecting through, through gaming or any other way of meeting people online is like pretty mainstream, and we're used to meeting people that way. What was it like in sort of the earlier days of MySpace and some of the other ventures you've been a part of, trying to get that message out there that now you could connect with people anywhere they were?
Yeah, that's a great question. Those of us that are old enough, remember the days where when you were online, it felt odd, like who's online? Only like weird people are online. You guys go into these like chat rooms and you chat with strangers, and they could be a serial killer, or people that was said, well, great, yeah, maybe you can sell books online, but you can't sell clothes. Like you can't try on clothes. You need to feel the fabric. You can't sell clothes online, right? Or people said, well, hold on, this thing, you're going to trust this Salesforce thing with your data? This data needs to be protected. It needs to be in your office behind the locked door. You see, you can't put it out on the internet and stick it on some provider. Like all of these things, or whatever, social. I joined my first dating site. I'm married now, I have 3 kids, but I started online dating in 1996 on a website called Love at First Site, SITE.com. In Los Angeles, there were less than 2,000 people that were listed, this males and females, on this service at the time. And I started meeting people, and I thought it was amazing. It was going to be the future. But the stigma then was horrible, where you couldn't tell people that you met somebody online. They like looked at you like, people sort of make that face and say that. But yes, now we live in a different world. Now for years now, the number one answer when kids were asked what they want to do when they professionally, when they graduate, the number one answer has been, I want to be a YouTuber. This for more than 5 years running now. This past year, another survey, more than 30% of kids answering said they want to be YouTubers. When you add TikToker and Instagrammer and podcaster, it's more than 50%. More than 50% of people want to do this professionally. To speaking to anyone in those days that this was going to be the case, nobody would have believed you or me. But yeah, now we get to solve problems from a whole new sort of starting point. We no longer have to convince people that it's valuable or it's important or it's cool or whatever it is to start building your network, to start engaging with people digitally. Look what we're doing here. We are digitally engaging with each other, and we're restricted in our communication by this Zoom thingy we're using. Now, for full disclosure, I bought 100 grand worth of Zoom at $113 when the thing crashed. So I'm a shareholder. I love that Zoom is doing great. That's fantastic. But it's limited in how we can communicate. I can wave my hands and use my voice and whatever. You can see me here, but we can chat and I can share a screen. But that's so limiting, and in this case, of course, ephemeral. Once you start thinking about, like, again, now starting from this point, now that we know how to do this, what if we could add all these capabilities? Like, snap our fingers. Right now, we've got all these other new interfaces. Wow. Some are long lasting, some are transactional, some are different forms of multimedia, some are collaborative, some are just for fun, others are serious, right? So, like, these are all sort of different modes that I think are the right things to think about, once we sort of get past our fascination with our history of, like, finding ourselves here, sort of with all these pioneers that have led us here, right? You can, some people like to sort of play the naysayer, the critic of social media, for example. It's easy to do. Look what it's turned us into. It's practically destroyed democracy, and we're all separated from each other. We feel connected, but we're not. So there are lots of people that can play that role, and I give them credit. That's fair. I think they all make actually great points. All of that is true. But if we take the optimistic look at it, we now have this capability starting on the backs, on the shoulders of our predecessors, of these giants that brought us here. Now, if we stand on their shoulders and say, what else can we do? What other heights can we reach? That's where I sort of choose to focus my attention on.
No, that's exciting. And even, part of this is, as you're building this too, does it feel like that now, you're sort of you've been in the market as a user of some of these platforms, but now you're also basically creating a platform anybody else can create on, which is kind of cool to think about, as you build the app store model and build a place for other developers and coders and everything to come together and, create all these use cases here.
Sorry, I may have missed a question on.
No, I was just, I think it's, it's an interesting, space you're in now. And, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of flexibility in where, what other people can add to the mix, and where it can go from here. So how do you, you've gone through a couple stages, I know, or you had was there a quick, or a pivot from another name before this? And I guess how did the process go, coming out or from the idea of Koji to getting to where you are today with this app store model?
Yeah, so the company is almost 5 years old. And for the first 2 years, we built another platform called Metaverse. Metaverse. You can go metaversestudio.com. It's still up and running. There's over 1,000 augmented reality experiences created on that platform every single day, for 30 days. It's primarily being used in education. And we learned a bunch of things while building that platform and got super excited about sort of taking those learnings and starting from scratch. And so we created an entirely new code base and started building a second platform, which all of us are now solely focused on for the last 3 years, and that's Koji. And sort of the seed idea concept of Koji came from, again, a realization we had after having built Metaverse. So Metaverse allows anyone to sort of use, we call it a storyboard, online, to arrange some components, connect them together, and configure them to create augmented reality experiences. Think like Pokemon Go as a platform. And we made it so easy to use that platform that grade school, teachers and children said, this is amazing. We've got first graders that can write code without writing code, can create software without writing code. You guys have built this platform that does it. And people create the most intricate, amazing storyboards. Some of them that take 20 hours plus to create. They've got 100 plus components. It's incredible. But the number one thing that sort of kept coming back from all of that is sort of people, I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying, this is amazing that we can build all of these things, but it would be awesome if we didn't have to. If we could just take that thing that other person built and just make a copy of that and modify it a little bit. And that sort of reminded us of the reality, again, of the world we live in, is when people tell you about a new product idea they want to build, especially like in apps and tech, how do they say it? They say it's like this for that. It's like Uber for dog walking. It's like Airbnb for people who have music recording equipment in their home. It's like this, but different in this way. It never starts with, it's not like anything you've ever seen before. Let me start from scratch and frame it for you. And so if that's the case, then wouldn't it be awesome if we could create a platform that allowed all the apps of the world to sort of exist, and then somebody wanting to create something new shows up and says, well, what is it like? That's the first question that says, if it's like this for what? For this thing. And you're like, oh, it's more like Uber, or it's more like Airbnb. And then you could just take that and clone it and modify it. And we call that subtractive development. So that's kind of from the broad concept that we started from. And we built this development environment and this cloning environment and like this marketplace, the app store, to facilitate all of that. And so we spent 2.5 years building it. And then when we took it to market, this is in like September of last year, September, October, we said, introducing interactive posts. You can use this system to clone any of these app templates, modify it, customize it to your liking, and then it gives you a link, and you can take that link and share it anywhere, because you can share a link anywhere. And we said, this is amazing, right? Like interactive posts. And people said, yeah, this is amazing. It's mind blowing. But as we looked at their usage, they kind of struggled there, thinking about them as interactive posts. It wasn't until for a few months we saw what people were actually excited about using these for, that we realized that we had missed sort of a big part of the ecosystem. We built the developer environment and the runtime environment and payments and notifications. We built a virtual operating system. This is the closest comp to this is like iOS core services. That's what Koji is. It's a virtual operating system for web apps. Developer environment, runtime environment, all the common components, etc. And then an app store with payments, in-app payments, etc. But what we had forgotten to build was the launcher. We said there are apps. You can use these apps anywhere. There are links, share them. And then people said, oh, I'm going to go find the launcher, Linktree. And I'm going to take Linktree. And because these are just apps, I'm going to add it to my Linktree. Or add it to one of these, there's over 50 of these competitors of link in bio. And we saw people starting to add Koji to those as little modules. And then after sort of watching it for a few months and trying to get them not to think of it like that, trying to get them to think of it as interactive posts. We're like, why are we doing that? If they want to use them as these apps, they're right. This is a launcher facing outwards. We should give them a better launcher. And that's what we did. So we spent a week, 1 week, one developer, 1 week, and we built a launcher. And that changed everything. And now everything is gangbusters, and our retention is just stupid off the charts. And like, so it's a really interesting story of sort of this windy road we took to get here. And it wasn't until a month and a half ago that we launched this link in bio thing with this app store that finally sort of all the catalysts were there that sparked and took off.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point of just, you know, or the way you approach this was that you watched how the customers were using it and you built, you know, I mean, it's great you could do that in a week, just, you know, build something that fit the way they were using it instead of trying to get them to use it the way you wanted them to. So, no, I really like that story. And yeah, it's exciting to see, you know, to hear the traction you're getting from that. Yeah, I wanted to pull in an audience question here from Sebastian. Basically, his startup's looking to tokenize content creation by influencers. And do you see a role for blockchain technology in the creator economy?
Great question. Short answer is yes. The long answer is much more, you know, complex, much more nuanced. I think in the near term, there's obviously lots of excitement about, for example, NFTs, and then sort of now people are asking us, hey, do you guys have a mini app where I can display my NFTs on my, you know, on my profile, on my link in bio, right? There's sort of that part of it. But in the near term is interesting set of sort of needs that creators have. I mean, we're sort of becoming the bridge sort of between, let's call it Web 2.0 and sort of Web 3 as it's known, like all of this sort of blockchain web, right? So that's a near term thing. Certainly, you know, crypto payments it is a piece of it. You know, today, you know, we do kind of the old boring way of people paying for things using regular credit cards. Does it make sense for somebody to show up and create a Koji, some third party, and facilitate, you know, payments in some other way? Absolutely, right? So I'm sure that's going to happen in the near term. You know, long term, again, we could get into a deep discussion on where the world could go if we really leaned into innovating, you know, and sort of solved all the big issues we have today with blockchain and crypto, right? So yeah, right. So I'm absolutely bullish on blockchain in the right situations for the right reasons. I think there, you know, in some places there's way too much hype, you know, from people mostly being driven by pump and dump stuff, like on all the speculation. Once we can sort of get past that, if we can get past that and find real uses, there's certainly lots of room for innovation, and it has its place.
Right. Yeah, and then the other piece, you know, to jump back a little bit here is, I mean, on the across the top social media platforms now, you know, you see a lot of the functions, you know, being replicated across whether it's taking, you know, TikTok into Reels or taking the stories into fleets. And so, you know, how do you see like the platforms, you know, whether it's or yeah, how do you see the social media platforms, you know, standing out from each other as we go forward?
We're already seeing it in the form that, to your point, everybody sort of copies everybody else. And so these platforms, by themselves sort of behaving in this way, have commoditized each other. You can look at them in many ways as sort of dumb pipes with an algorithm and a social graph. And you like this one a little bit better than this one, and you might open that one instead of something else. They will continue to add features, whether it's features for consumers or for creators or advertisers. Innovation generally is slow when you're dealing with these sort of giant platforms. Introducing new features is a massive undertaking. But again, as a creator today, everyone wants to be a multi-platform creator, right? When people talk about best practices, hey, you just got the favor of the algorithm in TikTok, and all of a sudden you're going viral. What's the first thing you should do? First thing you should do is not monetize, is leverage that to start planting other seeds on other networks, to repurpose the content so you can become a multi-platform creator. You've got to diversify. Otherwise, at any moment, the algorithm could change its mind and you're dead. And so this is like an existential, fundamental drive of creators in the foreseeable modern future. We're going to be multi-platform creators. And so by definition, in this case, you need something above those platforms. That's sort of the aggregator. What's the canonical you? What's the URL you put on your email signature if you had one and linked somewhere? Or put on your business card, not but for like social purposes. What is that URL? We used to have about.me. Tony Conrad built about.me.
Right.
There are other services. For a bunch of people, it was like WordPress blog. For some people, it was Myspace back in the day. They put their Myspace profile on that. We lost that. Today, nobody can choose. And so you see people actually daisy chaining their profiles. It's funny to watch, where your TikTok profile links to Instagram, Instagram links to Twitter, Twitter links to Snapchat, and whatever. Right? This is silly. That's not, that doesn't make sense. And so I believe that the future of all of this is that the platforms become still super important. They are the places where we meet new people to interact with, and we form our relationships. But we use those platforms with the intention of routing people up into the us platform, the me platform, my own platform, where I know your email address, I know your phone number. You have given me the right to send you messages directly from my account. No algorithm can ever get in our way. And if I join any new future network, I can easily take my entire audience and talk to them and say, let's go over here too. And I don't have to daisy chain anything anymore. If you find me on TikTok, you just go up one level, and there you can find me on all the other services. And if that thing allows me to, one is constantly being iterated upon, and there's innovation, and it allows me to do all those things I need to do, I believe that the near future of social networking is that the profile, the you thing above it, that's the social network, sort of atomic nodes that know about each other perhaps, and certainly know of their audiences. And that all of these networks here are just places that we sort of fish for new connections to bring them up here. They're feeders into this.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, take everything I say with like 1 trillion pounds of salt. My advice is free because that's about what it's worth. But this is the delusion that I'm living under, that this is the world that I'm seeing materialize in front of our eyes. And I can point to now many instances that demonstrate that across, genres of content and sizes of creators and whatever, any other dimension.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things, one of the parallels I see with what you're building now and, MySpace too, is sort of in between. It was, I think, what stood out to me, I was a user then too, was that it was everything, like compared to other social media, everything was like fully customizable. It was your page. And, seems like that's something you're looking to bring back with, your own app store, and where you can plug in whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, look, that's actually really important. I tell people I only have one magic trick, and you guys can try it yourselves. Uh, if you go to Twitter and you do a search for, in quotes, I miss MySpace, what are the chances that today, what is it, June 9th, 2021, that anyone would make that exact tweet, I miss MySpace? That doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody miss MySpace? But guess what? Every time I've ever done that trick, there are people that are tweeting that. I was not only thinking that, but tweeting that. To me, I find that amazing, fascinating. Why is it that in today's world, with all this choice, that anybody would miss that? Well, they tell us. What do they miss? They miss this thing you're pointing to. They miss creativity. They miss learning HTML and CSS and spending countless hours customizing their profile, making it unique, you see, and then choosing their 8 friends, and then choosing which songs they're going to put on there. It's a form of self-expression. And no matter how good you are, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you can't express yourself there. Those are just databases when it comes to the profiles, right? Form with some fields. And humans are, we like to, 52 years old, I got spiky hair. Why? My mom asks me all the time. So, you look silly. I agree. But I like looking silly, I guess. But that's the point. And so yeah, so the ability to customize it is huge. And then again, this ability to you see on Facebook or Twitter or any of the social networks we have today, the etiquette of just approaching strangers and adding them as a friend and striking up conversations, it's either sort of accepted as like networking, or you're supposed to know each other. But on MySpace, it was like a digital nightclub. Everyone showed up with the expectation that we're just going to mingle. We're just all going to friend each other. And we're going to thank each other for friending ourselves. And then we were collecting friends, became known as friend collecting. Some people had over 200,000, friends. You can't do that with any service today. And that's not followers. It's sort of like asymmetrical thing is in today's world is not the same thing. And so that still doesn't exist. That's why people miss it. Something like that doesn't exist today.
No, that's great. Yeah, and then built from all the other experiences and brands you've built. I mean, I'm sure this could be a a large topic itself, but what are some of the thing moving into, or when you took on the CEO and founder role here, that you wanted to make sure you applied to a business of your own, like experiences from previous ventures?
Got it. Yeah, look, it's hard to perhaps sort of like, they're all sort of matrix complex learnings, right? I think that we all have.
Right.
The more experience we have, we pick up a piece of this, a piece of that, together we mash it together and say, now this makes more sense to me and this is a better approach. So I could point a bunch of those out, but sort of isolating them. I learned this thing from this company and that thing from another. I've answered that question sometimes, and I'm always sort of disappointed with my answers. I'm not going to answer it that way. Let me tell you about how I am different now and how I operate than I was when I was younger, and perhaps that will better clarify.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I've always taken. So I was a terrible student in school. I had a 2.1 GPA with a big curve and a roundup. Okay, and so I'm not that bright. And so I always sort of come to things with that mindset that other people are more than likely smarter than I am, and therefore I should let them do something, right? And in the past, I did that willingly. In the first 2 companies, I voluntarily replaced myself with another CEO. I may have been doing some architecture work or product work, and sort of very quickly replaced myself with other people. And by the way, was fortunate, that I chose good people and done it. But then over the years, I realized that that was a construct in my head that I believed that other people could do it better than I could, and that I was cheating by using that crutch. And instead, what I should have done is done the hard work and done it myself and continued to do, meaning certain things myself and hand off other things. And so over time, that's been sort of refactored, a bunch of different times. That was sort of one. Another one was sort of an event that became really interesting is after about a month into Google, I was having some drinks. Everywhere at Google, there are like mini bars in the office, and so you can't walk like 50 feet without somebody saying, "Oh, you want to come by my desk? I've got a nice mini bar," and so everybody's making cocktails. It's an interesting place to work. And so whatever. One night, afternoon, 5 o'clock, after work, I'm having a cocktail with a colleague of mine. And, sort of got super open, said, yeah, look, they're like, how are you liking it here? I'm like, it's amazing. Just everybody's much smarter than I am and all that. I don't know how I slipped through the cracks through the interview process. It feels like I shouldn't be here. It's known as the imposter syndrome,
Right.
And, and as luck would have it, my supervisor was walking past me behind me when I said it. And then a couple of days later, pulled me off to the side and said, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing I overheard. And I said, yeah. He's like, do you trust me? And I kind of paused for a second. I'm like, I've known this guy for a month now. Do I trust him? And I was like, yeah, actually, I trust you. I trust you a lot. Somehow I trust you a lot. Really brilliant, this guy, Mark Gandhi. And he said, well, good. He's like, then trust me on this. You didn't slip through the cracks. We know who you are, and we're excited to have you here. It seems like you don't yet know who you are, and so I'm excited for you to hopefully learn that. And I just found that to be sort of like this profound thing. Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And it took me about a year and a half at Google for it to crystallize a little bit, which is, my colleagues at Google, most of them are radically smarter than I am in being able to take a bunch of data and put it together in a bunch of ways. They're better than I am at math, although I'm not too much of a slouch at math, but dramatically better than that. I mean, in a bunch of sort of like traditional ways that we would measure people. But it seems what I'm better at that is being able to look at no data and pick targets with lack of data, instinct, sort of philosophical understanding, or better understanding potentially of how, I don't want to say human nature, but like any of those kinds of things. It's hard to sort of point at it, but like instinct, some people call it vision. Anyway, so like after sort of processing that, Koji, we operate differently. We still obviously hire people and give them responsibilities and get them to do a bunch of things. But I get much more involved, for example, these days in a bunch of nuances where I feel like I've got an instinct and I can help, and I parachute in and get my hands dirty in things that typically CEOs would not get their hands dirty on. Yeah. One person that I met at Google, Vic Gundotra, who was the SVP that ran Google Plus, when I first got there and sat in some meetings, I was blown away by the depth of knowledge and attention to detail that Vic had. He would be up here and then he would get down into the tiniest little, and at that time I was like, I don't get it. Why would you do that? You got to be thinking strategically and whatever. I was wrong. He was right. He massively reset my brain of what my responsibility is as a CEO. My responsibility is to know as much as everybody else about all the things they do and to pay attention to this stuff. It's a challenge, but that's kind of how I'm different now operating and practicing it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
There's one
Yeah,
other thing
and
that I'm sorry to interrupt.
sure.
There's one other thing that it did
No,
for me,
go
which
for it.
was odd, is I used to walk around with a notebook and a pen, and I would periodically sit in meetings and I'd write some stuff down. Some people like take notes. I never did that, but like I had it, and in every meeting I'd write the number of things down. And then when I was at Google, I just watched that nobody carried any notebooks around. And then they'd be like talking in a meeting. They're like, you remember, on November 18th, whatever, 2 years ago, we launched 1.8.2 and it had these features. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I can barely remember what I had for lunch. You remember version numbers of releases on certain dates and what features they had 2 years ago? What kind of a spaceship am I on? Well, guess what? After that actually took less time than realizing who I was, I guess. But after about a quarter, about 3 or 4 months, I realized that I don't carry a notebook anymore. And I just remember things. And I think being immersed and sort of believing that you can just remember things without writing them down, my memory got radically better. I learned to use it better. I saw other people doing it and I learned to use it better. And so today at 52, my brain feels much more capable than I did when I joined Google and I was 41 years old. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with nootropics. Like, I don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of coffee, I guess, but no, no butter in my
Just
coffee.
the experiences and seeing other people. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. And no, I want to open it up. Yeah, I want to open it up. If anybody in the audience has any questions, they want to unmute and unmute and ask now. And feel free to jump in. And if not, can continue with a few. But does anybody want to ask a question here?
Hey, Dmitry. Thanks so much for doing this chat with Jason. I was very excited to see your profile and to see all the great work that you've done. And I've been anticipating this Zoom for quite some time. So thanks so much. Over the past 15 to 20 years, we've seen platforms massively scale up and become global in nature and instant in the way that we can communicate and share, pass data around, and really connect to people everywhere. And of course, Myspace was very, very fundamental in that happening, and everything before and after it has kind of followed suit with really just being hyper connected globally and making this world a wonderfully small place in a way, and yet bigger for many, many other people as well. One of the areas that I'm working on is trying to upgrade payments to be able to scale to the level of social media communities. Right now we have billions of connected accounts across underneath hundreds of millions of influencers or larger accounts that kind of act as businesses. And so we've seen, a number of different technologies try to catch up and scale like social media platforms have, whether it's LinkedIn or Zoom or obviously Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. And my question to you is, what technologies do you wish were moving faster to improve the way that you're trying to expand or to improve the way that people connect? Because I'm focusing on bringing payments up to ultra scalability, so very, very small denominations can move in massive volumes and give influencers an actual impact and to actually influence change, to turn everybody into a Mr. Beast, for example, by allowing hundreds of millions of small denominations to move on a whim, unlike the way the rails can currently handle that. We have technologies that are really trying to catch up to the way that social media has set new precedents for the way we communicate. And I'm curious, what has been your greatest, hamstring in regards to developing your platforms, and what do you wish could ramp up as fast as social media platforms have?
Well, so first of all, the area you're addressing is obviously a prime example of it. If you can facilitate sort of micropayments better, let's call it, in many different ways, that's huge. But look, so I remember waiting in line I think it was in August, in 1995, for, an afternoon and through the night, basically. I think at midnight they let us in to buy a box, to buy a copy of Windows 95. It's kind of like Black Friday. Everybody rushed in, like they had them stacked all the way to the ceilings, like mountains of Windows 95, right? And I got, the software back and spent the rest of the night trying to install it on my little Toshiba 486 laptop. It's a clip-on, rollerball mouse. And then we said, well, that's stupid. Like, why are we buying boxes and waiting in line? Can't we just FTP the binaries and get them? And we did that for a moment. And then people said, well, that's stupid. Like, why do we need to download software and install it? Can't it just be a service? And then we did that, and that was amazing, right? And we said, well, of course, this is the way things should be. Software should just be available when you need it. And there should be countless amounts of it. You don't need to think about it before. When you need it, you should be able to find it and use it. Wow, fantastic, mind blowing. And then Steve Jobs showed up in 2007 and took us on a detour and said, no, there's this like amazing, mega sexy device, the iPhone, there's this app store, and there are these native apps, and forget the web. And then, Andy Rubin showed up with Android and with Google and fragmented it, whatever, 60,000 variants. And now, for the last, 14 years, we've been living in this detour. Most of us, we went all in and said, it's all about native apps. Let's forget the web. The web is inconsequential. We used to surf the web. We don't surf the web anymore. We used to like sit there and just type things into Google to see if we could find something interesting. There was StumbleUpon, there was Did, there were all these services, Delicious. That's been abandoned. There's a generation that's forgotten there's anything outside of these little siloed walled gardens. But what's interesting about it is that there's a bunch of nerds who didn't forget and have been sort of tooling around and upgrading what you can do with, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and a browser, and now, of course, every native app that matters has to better support links and not to lose people to browsers, not to intent out, have built web views, meaning their own browsers, in-app browsers. Everyone's got a browser, which is fantastic. Now, the problem, though, is that they're all sort of custom browsers. They don't talk to each other, right? And so now you got that kind of fragmentation going on. And so my wish is that we collectively, especially developers, come back and realize that this model of app stores and binaries that you have to download and install, this is back to FTP days. That doesn't make sense. That's not right. It should be web-based, and it should be available whenever you want it, and you should be able to choose it and put it there. Nobody should have to write again. If you want to make a feature, you got to write for the web, you got to write mobile web, you got to write Android and all of its derivatives, you got to write iOS, right? You want to make one change, you got to do it across all of those. That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, so I'm hoping that, we see people already doing that. Like, it's obvious, people coming around to it again. Once I think we get off that detour and start focusing on the web again, first of all, we'll realize that the web right now is freaking amazing what you can do, right? And when everybody starts focusing on, I think all of these sort of fragmentation problems get solved. Discovery is still a huge issue. Abuse is still a huge issue. Trust, common identity, global identity. As a creator, you want global analytics, cross-network analytics, right? Like, even if each service gives you amazing analytics, I got my analytics on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, whatever, that's worthless to me as a creator. Like, literally worthless. I can't use it. There's not enough hours in the day to do it. So what that it's amazing I've got all this capability. I only have limited, mental power and time. And so refactoring of all of that, getting rid of fragmentation. Choice is great until it is not, until it's a hindrance. And you get analysis paralysis and you get this fragmentation. And so I'm hoping that all of these things sort of naturally start to coalesce and winners start to be shown. And I hope the rant made some sense. We could talk about this for hours in another dimension too.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think there has been there was a trend towards amalgamation of sites that basically took content from all other areas and coalesced it into one spot. So you have this one spot fits all, like the Reddit or the Dig, stuff like that. Now you've got feeds scrolling as new trends on every platform. Every platform now has stories or their mechanic or their version of it. So they're all trying to take those features and mechanics that are working well on other platforms and replicate them without crossing any sort of copyright boundaries. But I also think that what's going to happen is as the tools increase, the performance of the platform, like as the tide rises, and every even small platform can have that amazing UX UI and global reach, you're going to have those like smaller communities that really want that eclectic experience, want that almost individuality and maybe even small personal, not global reach be something that is going to start drawing people in. So that personal type of relationship, the thing that MySpace did well, it brought personal to scale, but at the same time, you could still have that personal experience. I think we're going to start to see the evolution of the platforms create new little nodes and perks in different areas that are going to attract people to really start thinking outside the box and expand in those areas. And then, of course, from my point of view, monetization of those things without having to pay the platform is what we focus on, like giving creators the direct contact to their users and then allow money to flow through them to charities or users or organizations or means that are important to the creator, really to show influence. So I think we're in that Cambrian explosion. It has only been about 10, 15 years. All these new tools that we have, especially carrying these supercomputers around, this has changed our world, and it's really only the beginning of the way that your industries are going to continue to push the envelope and the needle forward in how we actually do connect. So I think the pendulum will swing back and forth.
We're in the dark. We're in the dark ages of the creator economy. Somebody I read earlier today said that wrote an article and said something along the lines of like, now that this has been solidified and we're sort of implying that we're at some maturity, I almost laughed out loud. We're in primordial soup of evolution here, and this cannot stand. There is no equilibrium with all these companies fighting it out for our attention. When Cameo gets you to go purchase a shout out from Sylvester Stallone to your dad, wishing him a happy birthday, the next thing Cameo wants is for you to stay there and do more stuff. And the fact that that's what they want breaks the relationship, because that is not what you wanted. You just wanted to buy your dad a present, and now they want to engage, and they might get some of your time, and that's not good, because everybody else wants that too. And so you get this, like, everybody's pulling at the creator and also pulling at the consumer, and obviously that doesn't make any sense. And until we can get rid of that, can we actually focus on what actually is the thing that the creator wants and the thing the consumer wants, and whatever, if there's a sponsor involved, what the sponsor wants, and forget these sort of selfish networks that are trying to pull at them. And if you can get to a state like that, that's, I think, when it opens up the Cambrian explosion, and you get this.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Jason, one last thing. I don't mean to bogart the conversation, but in the world that you're in, you have this battle that goes on where platforms, and you know this from Link in Bio, platforms don't want you to leave the platform. So they massively limited the number of links that you could put on your profile if it was on your Instagram or your TikTok, because the platform wants people to stay on it. So they've minimized the mechanics that would have somebody click on your thing and leave to a different platform, like a YouTube channel. So we're starting to see that battle, that turf war, retaining people on the platform. The more eyeballs are on the screen, the more that they can sell, the more, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to have this, I think, a stepwise punctuation of value have to be added in some creative function. That's going to be that next step in the arms race. They're going to have to bump it up another level, because the moment that you have YouTube channels talking and training people on how to make their Instagram more, catchy or sticky or how to rise, that's the moment that it does there is this, low hum, and it's staying at this low level. You need that next step up that's going to raise the bar of what platforms are doing, what creators are doing, and what content really is. And arguably we've got whole new mediums coming out with AR and VR, hopefully coming into real fruition in the 20s. We'll see different mechanics for people to be able to get together virtually, in a way that we haven't been able to.
No, that's a great point, and it's weird to think about us as in the 20s now, but no, the rest of that, yeah, I mean, really excited for what the social media space has in store for us. And just wanted to make sure we get to Sebastian's question here. So yeah, Sebastian, if you wanna unmute and yeah, be the final question here on tonight's fireside chat.
Okay, thank you. So the question I want to have is about being a startup in the creator economy. There is a big change between creators. Many people start podcasts, YouTube pages, and whatever. They are in the space a little and then they die. And there is this rotation that is very fast. And it's difficult to get a consistent metrics of how you monetize that, or how you're going to get revenue in the future if people are just popping in and popping out. So how you create a metric that can be consistent or show true growth. Thanks.
So I'm not sure I understand. Are you asking from a Koji standpoint or the creator?
The creator economy in general, how would you solve that problem or approach it, I guess?
The problem of that each one is competing and there's fragmentation.
No, that people enter the content creation economy all the time and they stay a little while and then they leave, and there is a new crop of people that enter, and you can never be sure who's gonna survive, right? Who's gonna be the next big guy, or who's gonna be able to stay.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. So the creator economy today, again, I propose is in these like early days, and people are still learning how to be creators and have staying power. Like in the early days of YouTube, for example, nobody believed, I believed, but couldn't quantify that people would be able to make a living creating videos, like people sitting in their homes creating videos and making a living. At that time, when I was pitching venture capitalists on raising money for VO, for my YouTube competitor, they laughed me out of the room when we proposed anything of the sort, because they said, well, nobody's going to pay for amateur video. Brands don't want to advertise on amateur content. They want the best one. They want, but over time, YouTube creators became awesome, right? Like I would put them up against any professional creator and say, this might be more powerful produced in somebody's home than something you spent $100 million producing. Yeah, this might look a little bit more glossy to the trained eye, but whatever, So I think these things figure themselves out. As more success stories happen, more people get inspired. As more creators play around and other creators watch them playing around and learn from them and try to do it themselves and find that they found something else. This is evolution. Like if you believe in evolution, this should be clear that it requires exuberance, combination, and time, and things work themselves out. I do believe, well, one, we know that, again, kids want to be creators and professional creators. And so that, I think that's a generational thing. So we've got at least a generation, I think, of people wanting to experiment and invest their time in doing that. And I believe in those people. I believe that their exuberance is going to drive innovation. And things, obviously all of these things are also getting much faster. Experimentation is getting faster. Our discovery mechanisms are already in place. So if somebody does something cool, everyone sees it instantly and can do cool things again, where before it might take months for us to discover somebody doing something cool. Now TikTok shows us to us then, and then 5 minutes later, somebody else is doing it, right? We've learned that remixing is a thing. Back in the day, from an etiquette standpoint, if somebody was doing something, it was in bad form for you to try to do that too. He was like, oh, you're plagiarizing, you're copying. That's not the world we live in today. Like all the networks plagiarize each other. All the creators plagiarize each other. It's not plagiarism. It's art. good art, great art, right? Steal. This is a thing. So anyway, so I think there's like all these things that naturally combine and you get success. It's the underwear gnomes episode of South Park. Underwear profit, right?
Right.
Okay.
No, I think that's great advice there. And yeah, it's encouraging to see. I mean, yeah, Kyoko just mentioned this in the chat too. You know, also encouraging to see that there's a big influx into the creator economy, and you know, it's to recognize that while it's been around, it's still in the early days, and there's a lot of innovation to come here. And oh yeah, just wanted to ask as we wrap up the chat here, and you know, really appreciate all the great stories and advice you've given throughout. And so for everybody listening, either on the chat or when we post it on the YouTube channel afterwards, what's the best way to follow along with Koji story or check it out for ourselves?
Well, if you just go to koji.to, KOJI.to, that's our website, or go to blog.withkoji.com, it's our blog. Or just watch the, you know, put some Google alerts on for creator economy or passion economy. We're releasing multiple apps a week now, where you've got new apps that are showing up that you can add to your link in bio. We released one today called Sponsor Quiz, which helps people who have sponsors fulfill their sponsors' needs in a powerful new way. And so you'll see just a ton of sort of innovation happening because of, again, the sort of lowered threshold of what's required to build something new for the creator economy. And always feel free and reach out to me. I'm happy to, again, my advice is free because it's worth it. And so feel free and send me an email. It's just Dmitry@withkoji.com. And if I can help, I'd be happy to help you guys.
I think you're underselling yourself again. But no, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in today. Yeah, check out, you know, we have a few other events coming up, from our pitch competition, a fireside chat with Diane Hessen and with Alex Stern. So yeah, definitely check out our startupgrind.com/Boston page and let us know if there's anything else we can help with. But yeah, appreciate everybody joining in, and thanks again, Dmitry, for great conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. See you, everyone.